Roy Reichow, Christian Business and Ethics.
Good evening, everyone. Pastor Dan asked me to speak to you tonight on business and my faith journey. I can only do that through short stories that I have traveled. And I'll start with the first one will be as Michelle and I were married in the summer of '74. 2 weeks after I was employed, my employer decided to retire, so I was unemployed. Not good for newlyweds. And we picked up a couple of jobs, flipping burgers at a burger joint. I sold Kirby vacuum cleaners, door to door. Did a warehouse work at Tyson Truck Lines, did some nights. And then I had a call from one of the clients that was from my old employer and asked me if I would actually do one of his floors. And I said, yes, I would. And that's when Reichow Parquet Flooring was established in 1974. Of course, Michelle's relatives and my relatives, and they're saying, you're 20 years old. What are you doing? You have no college education. We're looking at how are you going to try to succeed? Well, with faith and hard work, dedication, and Michelle and I made it work for the next 6 years until we hit the recession of the 80s. That's when interest rates went up to 18, 19, 20%. We had swing loans. And all of a sudden, then you're working from week to week, paycheck to paycheck, and the work was very limited. As we're feeling that same recession, a lot of us are feeling the very same thing today. And so there was a time at our Saviour's when there was a needy family here that needed some support, and that's the one thing I love about our Saviour's is when there is a need, we step up to the plate and we do help support the family here at our Saviour's. And Michelle wrote out a check that we couldn't cover, and the next thing is I'm looking at, we're from week to week, and we don't have the funds, and she just tells me, you have to have faith. The next day we're out cutting firewood, and we're out there, I bring my cordless phone out there, and the phone rings, and it's Reichow Parquet Flooring. And it was Mary. Mary says, Roy, I wanted to tell you, I've accepted your proposal. We have your down payment check ready, and you can start as early as Monday. And I'm thinking, yes, we have work again. And now I can also cover that check. But the main thing is Michelle's stacking firewood and looking up, and that's when she says, I told you, you have to have faith. Now I said, at that particular point, I said, no, faith, that was strictly timing. It had nothing to do with faith. And so it was kind of where about a month later, we cut firewood all winter long, or all summer long, and so she called in for lunch, stopped for lunch. I pulled my farm tractor up to the door, get out after lunch, and go to start the tractor, and the battery is dead. No problem, I'll get the pickup, we'll just take and jump it. We went to jump it. Now, jumping a 12 volt to a 6 volt's not the smartest thing in the world. And I went to jump the tractor. It didn't start. Next thing is, I hit the switch again, and this time I found myself about 10 feet away from the tractor, face down. I could not feel this part of my neck, my shoulder, my arm, my hand, or anything. And I'm laying there with my head turned away from it, and the first thing I thought of is, please, God, tell me my arm is attached. I need to support my family. Michelle was over the top of me asking me if I was okay. And at that point, I realized what happened, that the battery blew up. And I got up on my knees, and as I got up, my arm dragged across the ground, and my arm was completely limp. I walked over to the tractor, and looking at the tractor, and there was no battery. There was no steel case. Now, the case was rusted, but the case was gone. I looked underneath the gas tank, because the gas tank hangs over the battery, and there's no damage to the battery. And that's when I realized I have no shrapnel, no plastic, no battery acid. And Michelle says, you better thank God that you're alive. And it was a changing point in my life because of that reason. I realized at that point that when explosions happen, they happen in a 360. I'm standing 18 inches from an exploding battery, and I have nothing. Now, we have, in Michelle's family, we have two pastors that are Lutheran pastors, and we were standing at a family reunion talking around a campfire with Pastor Ron. And Pastor Ron, I'm telling him the story, and his jaw drops because it's something that he realized that, wow, you're still alive. And then he tells me that as he stands in the pulpit, he says, I can take a sermon or the message, and I can whisper that message. And there'll be 98% of those people will grasp that message and retain it. And then there's that 2% that got a thick skull like yours, Roy. And they're the ones that end up where you look at that we have to be a little more aggressive. And trust me, that battery that blew up was God's message to you. And you have a different journey. Pay attention. Where is it going to take you? Where is it going to lead you? And from that point on, I came back from the reunion realizing that, yes, I was very lucky in that. I don't know what my journey is. And over the next 20 years of business, that's when Michelle and I put so much into of looking at of how we expand our business by doing our very best. We're looking at on our customer service, making sure every single customer is happy. Looking at that our teamwork, making sure that our teamwork was done, that all our team players, that if they made a decision, we support our team players. When we start looking at far as the integrity is one that's really huge for me because I will not do any job that would not be in the best interest of my client. I can't do that, and I don't want God to let me do that. Well, that worked for the next 20-some years, and when I had my 30 years in the floor laying business, I was called to open up a new company. I should have been retiring, but no. I decided to take at this point and open up an inspection company for wood flooring. And at that point, I decided I wanted to help those who could not help themselves. If they have a bad floor, I will be the individual that will help you assist in getting the mediation and making sure we get that corrected. There was one individual that we had was being sued for $38,000 just by putting tape on top of a floor. And I felt that was very unjust. But what happened was we had an unjust flooring contractor, heard I was coming out. He dragged his sanders out there and ripped all that finish off, which now I have nothing to inspect, and I could not help him. And that made me very upset with that. What I did at that point is I wrote a paper for the International Insurance Fraud Association and had submitted it to him. And the editor called me up about 2 weeks later and said, Roy, this is great material. We would like to run with it and print it. I said, that's what it's there for. Please do. They printed it, and I received it on a Friday, and on the following Wednesday, I get a call from an association, an insurance adjusters association here in Minneapolis. And that's when they told me, Roy, we have a speaking slot open, and you're local, and you are slotted to fill and speak. Would you please accept the call? And I did. And Michelle said, you know, Roy, don't worry about it. It's only 25, 30 people, and if it's talking about wood floors, you can do that. It's just, you know, like you can talk the paint off of a park bench if you sit there long enough, so it's kind of, you know, don't worry about it. Well, I get over to the seminar, and I prepared for it, and the next thing I go to the registration table, and I look, and I peel back, and I go, 95 people. All of a sudden, my hands begin to sweat instantly. My feet sweat, my armpits sweat, sweat on my forehead. And I forgot what I'm going to speak about. And the next thing is like, holy smokes. But I'm reading a book that's from the bookstore called Speaking for Dummies. So I read in the book that if you actually sit and run in place for 5 minutes, you'll have all the energy back, and so you can do the presentation. Great, I'll do that. Problem was, I couldn't do it in the hallway, and I couldn't do it in the conference room, so the restroom. I'll go to the restroom. And so I go to the restroom to go start running in place. And, of course, there's two gentlemen in there, and kind of like, can't you hurry up? Can't you guys get out of here? I got some run in place. Well, as soon as they left, all of a sudden, there's like this warming sensation that runs down my body. And all of a sudden, my hand was totally calm. And the very next thing I heard was a voice, and the voice was Kim Froggatt. And what she said was, shoulders back, chin up, and project over the top. That's what she kept telling us in choir. Every time we stood on a bleacher, sitting over the top. Now, I love her to death like we all do, but it kind of really bothered me that why is she talking to me about seminar when she's a music director and a choir director? And so I got so flustered with that, I walked right out the door, over into my seminar, or into the conference room. I got my laptop out, memory stick, got everything up. I'm hot, I'm on the screen. Good, I got 3 minutes to spare, and I go, good, I'm ready. And there it is again. She spoke to me again and said, Roy, remember, shoulders back, chin up, project over the top, and you'll do just fine. And the seminar did go absolutely perfect. I couldn't have been more happy with it for my very first seminar. And from that point on, I felt that there was a calling and a change in my life. And this is the change when you start thinking of is how you can actually help others. How can we actually go through life and make that change? As an inspector, you go through and make change in separating good from bad. I'm looking at how can I help those and teach and make them learn even further. And this is the part that I have experienced now in giving seminars nationally. I've given locally here. We've provided our own seminars and educational programs. But really, it was God's calling me for one reason, and that was to give the support for those who couldn't help themselves. And I look at it through, when we start thinking of as our core values. And to me, it's something that I try in every one of my seminars is looking at is with the integrity of one is the honesty and not compromising the truth. If we compromise the truth, we haven't done anything. When we look at teamwork, it's the very same thing as I look at when I having the individuals that are also in far as the educational format of being the team and working with them. No different than a lot of you kids when you're sitting there passing the ball on to take the next shot and it's onto the buzzer and he misses. You have to support that team player, even though it was 100, he gave 110% to make that basket. We still need that support. And the other is accountability. I don't see that enough in our industry where they have being accountable or responsible for the actions. And that's why I took that lead into doing inspections of being able to separate of the good from the bad. I can only say that for me in my journey is when that tractor battery went off, it was a time in my life that changed everything. It changed the way I do business, changed the way I live. I look at the community that I live in, the church that I belong to, and looking at that it's the footprints that I look in the sand are not always mine. God's given me the direction where I'll go next, I don't know. But I do know I will succeed if I follow his lead.